Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all here. There's a lot of things I wanted to cover today, but the first thing I'd like to do is just acknowledge that we're still seeing a lot of negativity going on in the world, however you may interpret that. But I hope you're doing okay with it and not letting it get the best of you. I would suggest that the best way to handle the negativity is to maintain a regular practice of working on yourself. And that's what we're focusing on here. The negativity that's all around can be thought of as serving us in a metaphysical sense because it brings up the negativity inside, which can be basically fear and isolation. If you focus inwardly with the intent to release any negativity that's being stimulated, especially if you're using the emotional clearing process, you're making the most of the circumstances and advancing your personal evolution. The most basic starting point of such a practice is to raise your vibration and protect yourself on the psychic level. And this you can accomplish with a regular breath practice, which builds your prana body, and the emotional clearing induction, where you form the protective psychic shield and ground down to the earth, and then lift yourself into the transpersonal witnessing mode and try to stay there as long as you can. We'll do those steps together later today. Last time, we continued to explore core feelings and first level emotions. We can still discuss any questions or sharing you may have about that because that's an important subject. But I wanted to introduce another concept which will help you clarify your understanding of core feelings and how they affect you. In the video I posted last week, I introduced the idea of the attachment-aversion syndrome. I hope you had a chance to start thinking along those lines and how you might be caught in an unconscious attachment-aversion loop so you can start to break free of it. We call it a loop because its characteristic is to keep you going in circles, bouncing from one side to the other and back again. There's really no ending the loop if you're unaware of it, and you can spend your whole life trapped in it. The attachment aversion syndrome is where you become fixated on obtaining something in your life, thinking that it will eliminate some other painful negative condition. What you don't see is that the positive and negative always go together, so that acquiring more of what you perceive to be the positive doesn't eliminate the negative, but in fact only incites it to become stronger, according to the rules of duality, which I've discussed in other places. The attachment aversion syndrome is basic to Buddhism 101, and in many ways may be one of the most important principles that Buddhism teaches. The way out that Buddhism recommends is to recognize your attachment to any particular thing, whether it's a person, a certain condition in life, or whatever, and then try to pull back on that attachment. When we say attachment, we're really talking about what can be called a compulsion or fixation, eventually leading to an addiction to any particular item. You try to recognize your fixation and ease off, and at the same time, you try to become more tolerant of the negative side to the syndrome because you're caught in an unrealistic aversion to the negative. But here's where the emotional clearing work comes in, because I believe the process we do takes up where Buddhism leaves off and gives you a detailed method to successfully integrate and eventually release the negative core feelings that have been compelling you into the syndrome. As you release the negative, you're no longer driven to obtain the positive. This kind of behavior is referred to in psychological circles as obsessive compulsive disorder or OCD, and is quite common. It's where you become irrationally driven to obtain some means that you think will keep the perceived negative away. But it's also interesting to look at what can be considered to be a more extreme version of this same type of behavior, known as manic depressive or bipolar behavior, which is founded on the same basic principle we're talking about. In bipolar, you're swinging between the two poles of the loop. You can be elated and high, and then fall off the edge into deep depressive lows, and then find or invent reasons to blame the depressive low on. This is the same kind of thing as the basic attachment aversion loop. In advanced bipolar cases, there may or may not be a particular object of obsession, but the pattern has been learned from years of continual unconscious repression of the negative and grasping for the positive. So the loop takes over and becomes normal for you, compelling you into irrational, tragic behavior. In my new book, soon to be released, I wrote a few pages, which is one of my favorite sections in the book, about a hypothetical counseling session I do with Vincent van Gogh, the famous painter. I got into this by happening to catch on TCM the old movie Lust for Life, which is his life story, and which I would recommend highly. In the movie, he talks about his torments and how the most painful thing he encounters is loneliness. Loneliness is driving him mad. And his only recourse is to submerge himself in his painting. Now, you may think that it's great that he has something to turn to escape from the loneliness. And I think you'll find that many psychotherapists will actually encourage this kind of diversionary avoidance, habit-forming behavior in their clients. But in my hypothetical counseling session with him, I point out that while it's wonderful to have such an active, creative, right brain artistic ability, he's using it to try to fix the loneliness. And it's become an addiction. The painting has become an addiction. He's addicted to his painting in the effort to solve the loneliness. But the condition just gets worse and eventually leads to self-destruction. I can identify with this syndrome because I experienced it myself, big time, in my 20s and 30s, when I was totally engulfed in the artist's life, composing and recording music. And this is what eventually led me into the psychology field. It's the attachment-aversion syndrome, obsessive compulsive behavior, bipolar manic depressive behavior. So basically, we're all manic depressive. We're all bipolar, obsessive, compulsive. And usually it's a more mild form of the clinical version that brings people into the psychiatrist's office, but it's the same principle. If you can spot it in yourself, become conscious of it, you're starting to unwind from the trap. In the end, the key way out is to process the negative. That's really the only way to break the syndrome. Only very few of us can do it by an act of will. Find the first level emotions and don't be ruled by them. Find the core feelings behind them and process everything. If it's loneliness, process that. Don't be afraid of it. It will balance out and lead you into true independent individuality and your higher self. Releasing the negative will take you out of the syndrome. Let's open the floor for sharing, and we can get more into the specifics of how the syndrome manifests itself based on what's happening with you.
Yes, I became aware of some issues, some feelings I had about my mom, and how I wasn't aware before, but now I am, that I'm holding hurt over like her not being available, like when I was a kid, emotionally.
Right.
And so I guess the question I have is, when you're talking about attachment and the this letting go of attachment, does that apply to like really old and like attachment wounds, or like things that are from your childhood as well?
Oh, you're talking about attachment wounds. That's not really what I'm referring to, but that's certainly important. But the kind of attachment I'm referring to is because of this initial, let's call it attachment wound, you're then driven into some kind of compensatory behavior. So you become attached to something else. Maybe it's your
Yeah,
child.
I got that out of it. Yeah, I grasped that that's what you were talking about. But I guess I'm asking, like, um, um, does the feel, so you're saying the feeling that you get when you're attached and you're disappointed, like in an ongoing life, does it just kind of funnel back and draw on the original pain of the attachment wound?
Yeah, you would. You're feeling the so there's the original attachment wound. Let's try to identify it. So, is it abandonment or
I think, yeah.
absence of mothering?
I think basically it was kind of like a triangle situation where my dad was really needy emotionally, and so he kind of took a lot of oxygen out of the room emotionally all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so there were times when my mom would side with him to stab
Okay.
his emotional
Okay.
needs, and here I am, the little kid, and I didn't realize it, but I don't think I was being mirrored or
Okay.
supported.
So you're feeling ignored. I want to try to identify it because that's important. So let's say you were ignored by your mother or maybe the father too, and that being ignored resulted in a kind of experience of deficiency of parental influence and care, which is resulting in some kind of reactive behavior today. So the being ignored, we assume, becomes suppressed. It's traumatic, and the child has no means really to resolve the trauma of being a child. So that's what childhood trauma is. So there's a sense of being ignored, which continues with you into adulthood, and then becomes projected onto other people and objects in your current life. But the attachment that you're experiencing, so can you identify what you're being attached to as a result of this, negative experience? Because that's what we're trying to identify, the positive and the negative.
I think I became attached to a need for people to somehow mirror me or
Yeah.
say that I was okay or that my
Yeah.
feelings were allowed.
Right. So that sounds right. So a general sense of being recognized or approval or something along those lines. So that's your syndrome. You're attached to being receiving approval and recognition as a compensatory device for the original being ignored experience. But then what happens is the original being ignored experience gets projected on the people that you're now looking for satisfaction, psychological satisfaction. So that's the syndrome. So, and as I said, you can be caught up in that for your whole life and not really recognize it. So the way out is to recognize the syndrome, become conscious of it, and as I mentioned in my talk, if you can just, as a result of becoming aware of the syndrome, start to ease up on it. Probably you can to a certain extent, but in my experience, it's not really possible to break free of the syndrome completely through an act of awareness, and that's where processing comes in. So you recognize that you have this compulsive need for recognition, let's say, and then you don't get it, and then you feel frustrated. So that's when you move into a processing mode. That's when the pain comes up, the childhood pain comes up of being ignored, and that's what you process. You take responsibility for that original childhood trauma now being reflected by the new object of projection, and that becomes your material for process. So you sit with this sense of being ignored. Maybe it's not being good enough. Maybe it's abandonment. It's we're talking about heart issues basically, and there may be other factors connected in the heart, and that becomes your processing material. you stay with the negative and work with that and release it through the process that we're looking at.
I can really relate to that because
Uh-huh.
I feel like I've been a fixer all my life. Like I've always been trying to like figure out how to escape the negative and just have the positive. And I think I'm looking at it now and seeing that it's essentially an addictive response.
Uh-huh.
Like an escapist. I was like a huge escapist, and to the point where I think I completely squelched any negative feelings that I might feel. I mean, I literally disassociated at times to not feel. And I'm really happy to see this because I feel like I've been going through life really not attached. I mean, really not connected and conscious.
Yeah, connected. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the normal state. That's what we're trying to address in this work. Yeah, thanks. That's nice sharing.
I guess one of the, in terms of the whole attachment side of things, for me, one of the challenges that I have is I get really attached to an outcome with my business. And I think now it's my business. In the past, it would have been, relationships, or it would have been, in cricket, which you know a little bit about, John, now. So in terms of just getting certain results, and I think especially now, like one of the things I've noticed is in the last probably 18 months, my business has just kind of, exploded. But what's sort of happened is as I've actually grown, I've become way more insecure as well. And so there's this attachment to the outcome. So just for the benefit of everyone else, so basically I run a relationship coaching business where I help women to, to save their marriages, but also to reclaim their self-worth. And the way I sort of go about getting my business is through my Facebook ads. And I think the challenge with Facebook ads is it's so, it's like the stock market, right? Like you can run ads and sometimes they work beautifully and sometimes they just crap themselves. And so what I tend to find is I have these moments where pretty much at the start of every month, because there's no consistency in terms of how I'm actually going to perform for the month, I immediately start getting really, really insecure at the start of a month and start feeling like, oh, what happens if I earn nothing this month, and so forth. And I find myself just getting really, really caught up in all of that. And, if I have, like a few like sales calls with people, strategy sessions with people, and then, they choose not to go ahead or whatever, that just wobbles me big time. So I get attached to that outcome. And then on top of that, when it comes to, like I'm part of some different business groups and so forth online, and, inevitably there's a bit of peacocking going around, and, people say, oh, how I made X amount of money per month and da, 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 da. And I'm just sitting there going, I irrationally find myself sort of comparing, and there ends up being feelings of, say, inadequacy or jealousy is a big one sometimes for me. And it's funny because, I sort of mentioned, like, since, we did the training in September or whatever it was, John, things really kind of took off for me because I did some really, really deep work internally within myself. And then even in June, I had my biggest month ever. It was massive. And I'm sort of feeling like, you find yourself at a point where you start going, shit, do I have to maintain those standards every single month? And how can I maintain that and all that sort of stuff? So I think that, logically, I know it's, it's wrong. And I know that it's, when I'm sort of in my heart and when I'm really connected in with my heart and I'm really in service, like things just flow. But then when I get into these modes occasionally where, like I say, if I have a few calls in a row which don't convert or my ads stop performing, I know I get into that sort of survival mode, which is completely irrational, but it's sort of a habit that I've kind of gotten into, over the years. So I think that's something that, I have been sort of battling with a little bit. And sort of go up and down.
So can you see how that applies to what we're talking about, attachment aversion? It sounds like there's attachment to success.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
And when you don't experience that, then you fall into the negative side. So one of the points of this syndrome is that when you do have the attachment, and when the purpose of the attachment is to try to fix unconscious negative feelings, that's when you experience the negative side most strongly. So, even aside from, well, I think, like I said in the video last week, the first thing that happens with attachment, when some condition that you're bringing into your life appears to be successful, the first thing that happens is fear, because there's fear of losing it. And that's exactly what you're describing. You had this great month and you're doing well, but now there's fear about, can you maintain it and keep it up? So that, that may or may not necessarily be part of the subconscious. That may be just an existential result of the attachment aversion syndrome. You're attached to something, so then you have fear. But the basis of the attachment would be some other kind of suppressed negativity going on. So we would assume you're talking about survival level issues, and maybe solar plexus issues, worth issues as well. Maybe they're combined in some degree. But, when you feel like you're successful, that's when you feel like you're satisfying the survival suppressed negativity. Let's say there is some fear suppressed in the subconscious, fear about not having enough, or poverty, or lack. These would be the core feelings that you would try to get to beyond the initial fear when you fall into the negative side. So let's say it's something like, just basic, I'm not going to have enough. I'm not going to be able to survive. And then that drives you into the attachment side. So, everybody can identify with this. It's just a matter of to what degree are you being driven to attach to success and what we perceive to be, wealth, financial success, and so on. So, I would say the way out is basically to emphasize that in your practice, to recognize that there probably is attachment aversion syndrome going on, and then to focus deeply into the core feelings, which would be, lack and scarcity and poverty and not having enough, and maybe combined with this feeling of not being good enough if I don't perform well. So how does that sound? Does that ring any bells for you?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think, I think some of this conditioning anyway it sort of came from, I think, my dad a little bit, because I know he was always like, I'm not sure if, we've got enough money, or, he'd always had this kind of like poor man's mindset around money.
Okay.
And I think that's probably where I've sort of picked it up a little bit. And then I've always
but let me stop you right there, because that's I always try to correct that, that viewpoint. From my viewpoint, this, whatever we're talking about, this survival deficiency, sense of lack, not having enough, it's karmic.
Karmic, yeah.
It comes with you into this life, and then we choose our initial surroundings, our parents, to reflect that. So it's easy to blame our parents, and that's shifting responsibility from yourself. So I'd urge you to recognize that there's that tendency we can easily fall into, blaming our parents, to pull back on that and to say, yeah, I'm going to take responsibility for this. I came into this life with this syndrome in my subconscious, or at least with the negative suppressed energies in the survival center in my subconscious, and then maybe I developed the attachment aversion syndrome unconsciously in this life, but it's based on those original traumatic experiences that we brought into this life. But it's good to recognize that it's coming from a parent, and you can work on that level as long as you're taking responsibility. You can go into a regression and see yourself with a parent and see how they're acting on you, and then process that experience where you're lifting yourself out of and just detaching from the negativity, but you're using the parent as the movie that's bringing it up, but you're still taking responsibility for the experience, even though the movie is triggering it. Just let me reiterate for everybody that this work we're doing, anybody who's done psychotherapy knows that it takes a long time to change these lifelong patterns. It's not a quick fix. It doesn't happen overnight, but it can happen. And I believe that the system we're learning, based on my experience counseling people, can accelerate and lead you out of the darkness that you're in. Because if you're not aware of any of these principles and you're just reacting, you think your parents are responsible, you're flipping between success and failure, you're being totally driven by it, it's you're really at the mercy of these forces. So we're trying to lift ourselves out of these forces with this method, and try to find some eventual freedom.
One thing I notice is that I guess things are hypersensitive for me. So what I mean by that is if I get into that fear-based place, it is incredible how quickly things just shift in terms of everything will just start to crap itself. But then when I'm in that place where, I'm in that flow and just coming from the heart and, serving my clients with love and all that good stuff, then everything just kind of flows. It's incredible.
Yeah, I think that's just evidence that there is subconscious negativity. That's the way it comes up. It'll jump up immediately at the slightest provocation. So that, to me, that says there is a lot of subconscious stuff. So that would indicate, and this is for everybody too, what's important is to establish a regular practice where you're sitting every day. Maybe you're doing breath work for 10 minutes in the morning, and then later on you have a 30-minute meditation session every day to develop these skills. And you may not have strong feelings come up in every meditation session, but you're developing the capacity of going up into the third eye, lifting above your lower self. And then when these events come up like you're describing, then you have the tools and the capacity to deal with them. So, I think you're going deeper into deeper levels of yourself. That's why it's coming up. and you're having realizations of what the work really means, and how it's how it's so important and critical to do this stuff. And that's what happens as you go deeper. At first, you may encounter more negativity because that's what's there, but this is the time to do it. This life.
I was going to say, just a bit of feedback, John. A lot of my clients have been getting some huge benefits out of the emotional clearing work.
Great.
As well. So it's been awesome, like massive shifts.
Great. That's great to hear.
Great. So I thought I'd just give you a little bit of positive feedback on that.
Thanks for sharing, Sri. That was great.
I would like to, because this session before was really very important for me. I think it was, I think also this idea that this might be karma, or maybe from the family, some stuff what comes up, and I hope I can work with this for the next time, because I am suffering from a big fear at the moment, because my job, I lost my job for the end of the year, and I know that I have really a lot of capacities to in my private work. I am a yoga teacher and I am a therapist, but I have so much fear about this situation, not having the job in the back, and have to work just on my own, and not having anything, money coming in by regular basis. And I think it is really a very old issue in myself and also in my family. I see that also my sister is suffering from fear about her existence, even if she really does a very good job and she's a very high position in a job, and she still has fear. And I thought for a long time I had really it was calm, but now I have the feeling that the situation that comes at this moment comes really to show me that I have to release this.
Right.
No. And I suffer also very much from self-criticism. I very quickly I go into self-criticism if I see somebody is evolving or is doing a good job in the same field I would like to do, and I start with really beating myself and self-criticism.
Yeah.
I am better to deal with that, but anyway, I always have to see it. Okay, I see it, and then I can shift and say, okay, no. Yeah. You have these capacities, it's okay, and you don't need to do everything what the other people do. You have to do what you can do.
Okay, so, well that's the cognitive method. That's trying to pep talk your way out of the negative, right? You recognize that? So
that is the first step.
Maybe. So you said a number of things I wanted to comment on. Let me go backwards. So the self-criticism. I've been working on myself for a long time, and when I got into trying to expand my consciousness, I soon realized that I had every bloody feeling in the world inside me. There's no feeling that I don't have, that I can't actually call up. I can call up not being good enough, very, very quickly. I can call up being controlled and dominated very quickly. I can call up fear. But the thing is, are we operating on do we recognize that we're operating on a dualistic level? So when you shift to acceptance of these feelings instead of being upset by these feelings. I mean, that's the key. That's one of the keys. You know, that's acceptance. I've been trying to go through the steps of the process, but we're getting kind of diverted into other interesting channels that come up like today. But, you know, acceptance means where you really are okay with your anger. You're okay with not being good enough because you understand that it's part of the human psychological makeup. It's in there. You can't avoid it. But you can avoid not being controlled by it. You can transcend it. You can detach from it. You can say, that's my lower self, but I don't identify with that anymore. I'm building my higher self through meditation, especially through the third eye meditation, and I'm shifting into that. So, yeah, I can fall into not being good enough, and but you know, you don't deny it, you don't try to repress it, but you don't identify it. That's the key. I mean, there are a couple, there's some, maybe, you know, maybe there are 4 keys. Maybe each of the step is a key. Each key is important. If you move into acceptance, true acceptance of yourself, this is what a human being is. They have all kinds of negative and positive experiences. That's the nature of the 3-dimensional dualistic world. Okay, so then the other thing you said was your sister had a lot of fear, and I just wanted to use that as a springboard as well, because you might say, well, you know, my parents are fear-inducing. We both grew up in the same environments, and so we both have a lot of fear, and so it's we both inherited that from our parents. And you can say that about a lot of things. You know, I have a alcohol addiction because my parents were alcoholics. I have depression because my parents were manic depressive. That's all avoiding responsibility. It only means that people who have this tendency are karmically attracted to that environment, so that those potentials inside themselves will be activated. So, you know, so the Bach family had 20 or 30 musicians in the Bach family. It's not because they inherited those characteristics. It's because they wanted to just be in an environment that would allow those qualities that they had to develop. So it's all about witnessing, keeping up the practice, developing the and you're right, you know, so these are big time challenges. So like you're having fear about money. This is you know, it's the Kali Yuga. It's the chance to look at these things. But, you know, on the other hand, not everybody is being challenged in the same way. So if it's happening for you, then you can assume, you know, you've got a lot of fear in there. You've got a lot of survival stuff. Take advantage of the opportunity and really dig into your practice. It's the only way to get through this. You know, this current scene is it's just so unbelievably sinister what's happening, and we don't really know what's going to be coming up, but it could be a lot worse, and it could be really leading to, you know, very dark times. But keep building your practice, and that's what I hope this meeting will do. We're meeting here, we're trying to stimulate interest and build up a personal practice. Okay, thanks for sharing, Marie-Therese.
Some feelings come up in my everyday life, the negative feelings, mostly they are fear. And as I'm just about to sit and to do the processing, as I close my eyes and I enter into the processing, the feelings, they disappear. whatever I do, I cannot access them. And then as I open my eyes and then I continue back to doing the everyday work, the fear arises again. So any tips on how to deal with that? It's like, okay, I have the feeling and I'm about to do the process, and okay, the feelings disappear. And I return and they are here again.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. I think it's probably like a kind of stage fright, you know, where you sit down to do it and then you get scared about doing it and you close off. I think it's probably just a matter of time before you're able to access the feelings. Do you have what you could consider a regular meditation practice?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can't think of anything offhand to say except just, you know, keep practicing. And there's something that tenses up in you that cuts the feelings off. So, and we would hope that by breath work and, you know, maybe something like yoga would help to deeply relax you so that you don't fall into that mode of tensing up when you sit to meditate. You know, maybe it's trying too hard. Just relax a little more. If the feeling comes up when you're just not sitting, but comes up later, then stay with it then, you know. You don't necessarily need to go to a meditation position, but I think it's helpful. But whenever it comes up, then you try to process it then. Breathe into it. I think eventually you loosen up. I think it is just stage fright and tensing up. And but that's a nice question. Thanks. Thanks for sharing. Well, let's get ready to do the group meditation. We'll do the same thing that we've been doing, which I think has been working well. 10 minutes of conscious breathing, which is, you know, a long time. You should try to do this on your own. You can set a timer. But when we do it with the group, it's going to develop more powerful experience. And then let's say you've got an issue. So you're going to go into a processing mode with the issue, and we'll take it through the steps. So, you know, just to remind you, you're focusing on the negative. We're trying to bring acceptance and release to the negative. And then, in line with the attachment aversion theme, I'd like to take you through another, let's say, phase 2 of the meditation. And let me just explain it now so you know what we're doing. This is probably an advanced part of the work we do, but I'm going to just throw it out here to get you familiar with it. You know that if you're familiar with Jungian psychology, Jung talks about integrating positive and negative, bringing them together. And I've read a lot of Jung's work. I haven't actually seen, maybe because I haven't, you know, been trained as a Jungian therapist, but I haven't really seen that he offers any method to do this. But what we're going to do is to, as we go into the meditation, we're going to bring up the positive and the negative. So like Sri had, you know, your example was very well defined and clear cut. So let me use that if I may. So you're bringing up the positive, which is the well-being, you know, the success, the financial success, and the feeling that generates. We're always trying to go to a feeling. That's the important part, not just an intellectual concept. So the feeling comes up of well-being, security, protection. But then I want you to shift consciously to the negative, which is the feeling of scarcity, lack, panic, fear, I'm no good. And consciously generate that feeling as well. And this is a skill that you develop as you do a lot of emotional work. You should be able to evoke these feelings at will. But let's try it and see where you are. And then as we bring up these feelings, we're bringing them together. Eventually, you're going to be able to hold both of them simultaneously. And they'll start coming together so that they become one entity instead of the dualistic split that they are. So as I said, this is an advanced meditative emotional clearing procedure, but let's see how we do with it. All right, now close your eyes. And start focusing into your body, just like we were talking about. Because your body is the connection to your feeling center. So feel the difference between where you might have been a few seconds ago in the mind, the cognitive center, and you're flipping into the body feeling center. You should be able to feel a difference. Keep relaxing. Let go of the need to do anything. And maybe that's where some of you are getting hung up. You think you need to do something. You don't need to do anything. It's all about coming into the moment, dropping the need to do. You're moving into that place of non-doing. Cultivating non-doing. Now look at your breath. And we're going to breathe together with the count and try to observe the connected breath that I've talked about other places. You're using the yoga fill. Breathing smoothly in and out. Full breath. Consciously bringing in the prana. Okay, so get ready now. I'm going to start the tape. We're going to breathe along with the tape. Out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2. Out. So smooth, easy breath. And then relax on the exhale. Now keep the connected breath. This is where there's no pausing, no pause between in and out. Each one leads right into the other. And keep your tongue on the roof of your mouth. Now, on the next inhale, we're going to bring in the light from above. See the light coming in to the top of your head, going down to your solar plexus. And then as you exhale, send the light out to the edge of your aura, building your psychic shield. Now you can also send this psychic shield around our entire group. Visualize us sitting in a circle. You're bringing in the light from above, sending it out to a huge protective shield all around our group. Now bring up the earth energy. Feel the earth energy coming up from the center of the earth to the base of your spine. And this is the nurturing energy of the universe. Feel it supporting you, holding you. It's warm, unconditionally loving. And let this energy build up. Now, as you keep the light in place all around you, protecting you, and as you keep bringing up the earth energy, you're feeling both these energies. Go up to the third eye now, look up, and strain your eyes slightly as you look up. Feel yourself shifting over into higher self consciousness. However you may experience that, there's some kind of a shift. You're moving out of the lower self into higher self-awareness. Stay with with a smooth, easy breath, you're still looking up, feeling yourself shift over to the witness. Prana is still building up. Feel yourself waking up. The prana is coming in. Okay, that's 10 minutes of breath. Just relax your breath. Go back to a normal breath. You can release your eyes. Feel yourself to be in a altered state. Now this is the same as the hypnotic state, the deep alpha state. Complete relaxation. Relaxation of the conscious mind and connection of the subconscious through the body. Start tying into the music. Let the music take you to a transcendental place. And just relax in this beautiful, peaceful, tranquil place. Where you're in that state of non-doing. You're not striving to accomplish anything. Let go of the need to make anything happen. Feel yourself coming into the moment. Now let's send this place where you are right now deep into the subconscious as well, so that you are able to recall it at any time you want to in the future, just by remembering where you are now. A few breaths, moving into conscious non-doing, brings you into this relaxed alpha state. Now we're going to open the door to the subconscious, inviting forward any issue or feelings that are ready for you to come forward. Whatever's up for you, let's invite that to come forward now. Now see this as a movie. It's happening in front of you, but you're already detaching. You're watching the movie. It's affecting you, but you're not really in it. You're stepping back already. And let the feelings come up. Now, whenever your mind starts to get active, just go back to body-based feeling. You might start thinking about something or trying to solve something. That's all activities of the mind. Put aside any need to solve something. You're just moving into experience. The experience of the feelings. Keep dropping into the body. Maintain a regular, smooth breath. You're not being preoccupied with the breath, but it's still a regular, smooth breath. Try to keep your tongue on the roof of the mouth if you can, without being distracted by it. Also, you can tie into the body. Let's do a body scan, because often feelings will come up first in the body. Do a body scan from head to foot and see if any sensation, painful sensation, uncomfortable sensation is coming up. And if so, let's regard that as a somatic indication or manifestation of the feeling that you're working with. Keep breathing into it. Now, we're tying into the negative. You've got your issue, you're seeing yourself in the movie. It's bringing up some painful feeling. That's what we want to work with. Let that feeling come forward even more. And now let's take this feeling through the steps of the process. Step 1, awareness. Let's try to just determine what kind of feeling this is. Is this a first level emotion? Like anger, sadness, depression? Or can you find the core feeling behind the emotion, like abandonment or survival center fear or lack? power center being controlled, manipulated. Or sensation center, sexual feelings, frustration. Keep looking in that direction. Keep the movie in front of you if you need to stimulate the feelings. Don't be afraid of the feelings. Now that you've becoming more aware of the feeling, let's take responsibility for it, as we've been talking about today. Try to drop blame as best you can, whether it's blaming the external circumstances, blaming other people, blaming your parents. And recognize that as you take responsibility, you're moving beyond victim consciousness. Now, step 2, acceptance. Now, you may have dropped blame, at least a little bit, but acceptance is a mental stage where there's this resistance to the negative feeling because it's uncomfortable. Like we talked about earlier, find the resistance. It's that automatic mindset that says, this is no good. And reverse that sense of resistance, rejection, making the feeling wrong. Reverse all that with a sense of acceptance. Just be okay with the feeling. Allow the feeling. Make a place for the feeling. Keep relaxing into the feeling. Step 3, direct experience. Now that you've dropped resistance to at least a certain extent, you're able to perceive this feeling even more clearly in the body, where it becomes an energy. You're beyond good and bad. You're beyond judgmentalism. There's just you in the witness, witnessing and experiencing this energy in the body. Keep breathing into it. Find it in your body. See if it's stimulating any particular chakra point. If so, breathe into that. Relax into it. Keep feeling the nature of the energy. Is it constrictive? Is it selfish? Is it lacking something? Lacking something of the heart? And now, step 4, witnessing. Go up to the third eye again as you stay with the energetic experience in the body. And feel yourself shifting over even more into that witnessing place. As you look up into the third eye, straining your eyes slightly, and keep breathing. Tongue on the roof of the mouth. Now, as you're looking up still, you're coming more into the moment. Really feel that. And you're focusing on the energetic dynamics in your body. But it's really the energy body. It's not the physical body. That's where the emotions are. Feel what's happening. You may feel blocked points, constrictions. Just allow that all to be as it is. Keep breathing into it. It's just your conscious presence of these energetic dynamics that allows them to balance out and eventually release. Just being present. Lower your eyes. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to move to another stage. We're going to bring the positive and the negative together. So you've been focusing on the negative, but now open yourself to the positive side of this particular dualistic syndrome that you've been working with. What have you been seeking? What do you think will make this negative side better? What's been driving you? And what do you occasionally attain that makes you feel better? What positive feelings are occasionally stimulated when you feel as if you've attained the object that you're grasping for? So if it's survival center, it would be security and maybe money, or maybe it's health. If it's a significance center, it's this sense of being recognized, respected. If it's the heart center, it's this basic sense of being loved, accepted. These are probably the basic chakra points. But whatever's coming up for you, find the positive, let that feeling generate. See yourself in those circumstances where you've attained what you are seeking. The positive feeling comes up. Breathe into that positive feeling. we're going to shift back to the negative. Go back to the negative issue and let that feeling come up. This is the uncomfortable negative pole of the dualistic syndrome. Feel yourself unloved, insignificant, poverty-stricken. Now stay focused. If you feel like you're drifting off, step up your breath a little bit. Bring in more prana. And shift back to the positive side. See yourself having attained whatever you think will resolve that negative condition. And let that feeling come up of fulfillment. You're being loved. You're being respected. You have security. You feel secure. We want to generate these feelings. If you need to, use some visualization that will generate these positive feelings. Now we're going to bring them together. So bring up both positive and negative simultaneously. Stay with it. Now the positive and negative, we want them to merge in some way. They're coming together, closer, so that you're feeling them both at the same time. You're neither rejecting any side, as in aversion, nor are you being compelled to obtain any side, as in attachment. Both are there. Keep breathing into them. And you can visualize something that represents the energies coming together for you. Of course, there's the yin-yang symbol. That's what it's all about. Or the energies are spinning and blending into each other. Now, you're still on a feeling level. The visualization is only helping you to feel. Still, breathe into the body. feel what's happening in the body. Let's go up to the third eye once more to stimulate your witnessing consciousness. You're shifting above the dualistic positive-negative syndrome. Looking up, straining your eyes. Keeping up the breath. Lower your eyes. Okay, now we're just going to be non-directive for a few minutes. Just relax completely. Not trying to do anything anymore. Be totally present with just what is on a feeling level. Breathe into the body. But I'm going to speak to the subconscious for a moment. We've just done a very powerful exercise which will serve as a template to be deeply embedded into the subconscious, that you will be able to realize and activate more and more, even as you only continue just a regular meditation practice. You don't have to consciously be thinking about bringing positive and negative together, because that's been embedded. That's what's going to happen. You're moving in that direction of unification. Okay, keep relaxing. And let's start to wind down. We're going to close the door to the subconscious. And that all feelings, positive and negative, drift away. Just check in with your body again. Start to feel your body. Maybe start to move around a little. And I'm going to count you up to 5. When I reach 5, back to normal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.